first time I saw the parade at the Japan town, I think dancers, kimono, beautiful kimono, and walking nicely. So too nice, no noise. Then my friend made a omikoshi, killed the mikoshi. Then I play drum to make noise, just like a Japanese festival. で子供の時に見たそのイメージっていうのがとてもあったんで、そのお総太鼓のおじさんたちがこういろんな太鼓を打ってね、それが僕の頭にあったんで、それをやったらいいなと思って、そしてみんなが楽しめると。
I remember going to this concert, and I was in the balcony, and Tanaka's group was opening. All I remember was I wanted to literally jump out of the balcony and come join them. They just pulled me in my hara, was just being pulled by their spirit and their drumming.
Seiichi Tanaka's group, San Francisco Taiko Dojo, came to Los Angeles, and I think in the early 70s. He performed on a float. That was the first time that I had seen any semblances of traditional Japanese taiko, and I followed that float all the way through the whole parade, watching him.
Well, naturally, when we first started, there was no real kata for us, and there was no costumes. Our look was Kikoman show you happy coats with, bell-bottom pants and long hair and whatever it was. That was us, Seiichi Tanaka really kind of introduced kata to us.
Early 70s, just done. I think a lot of people quit. Maybe 10% people remain.
At that time when I was there, he was still pretty hardcore. I mean, we would have to run and we would have to sweat. There was a lot of pain, he always said, no pain, no gain.
To have a pain is beautiful. That's my original idea, original philosophy. That's where I learn everything, my aesthetic experience and the martial art experience. So that time to have pain is almost have a pain is a purpose.
There's something about that in Japanese culture of being in that kind of situation. It builds your character. It really tests you.
For Tanaka, even though you had to do it his way or the highway, kind of so to speak, he is a very open person because he let me in there, a crazy person like me. When he plays the drum, it means everything. It's really profound when he plays.
Well, there was two streams going on at that time. I would say there was the Tanaka Sensei stream, which is more closer to what was going on in Japan, in that he actually brought repertoire from Skeroku Daiko, from Osowa Daiko, as well as his own philosophy and style. And then there was the influence of the Buddhist churches of America via Kinna羅太鼓and Maskodani and his philosophy.
Kinna had always been a group taiko performance, but it came from the Buddhist traditional holiday Nozo Bon, in which there is an individual that plays this large Japanese drum, the taiko, in this yagara, in this tower, and he plays along with the folk dancing that happens in July. In '69, as we were putting the taiko away, people just started playing on it and playing on it for hours and hours.
So we said, yeah, it's kind of, only once a year. It's a nice drum. It's from Japan, So we start playing. And we must have played for 3 or 4 hours straight. We got blisters and they popped, so there was blood all over us, and we still played. And so George and I looked at each other and said, we should do something about this.
And I think from when we first started playing at Buddhist temples and different venues, and found people coming up to us afterwards saying, oh, that was incredible, and juiced, really, you could tell people were just energized by it.
In chatting with them, I found out there weren't very many musically trained people in this group. Once I heard them play and saw them jumping around and doing all this choreography, I was amazed.
There was nothing like it around, right? And then there was no teacher. There was a group of us that got together. We seen movies, we listened to records, we saw pictures, but there was no teacher.
That time I was very much Japanese. So eventually, Johnny Mori or those guys had a hard time to communicate me.
Since it came down, he heard about us and came down. We're on very good terms now, but at the time it was kind of tense. He said, well, you shouldn't call it taiko, you should call it drumming.
He wanted to know whether or not Kinada could not use the word taiko. We go, why? He goes, because you guys are not playing taiko. One way you're kind of being disrespectful to the drum, and what you guys are playing is not taiko. You're playing on these barrels, what you're playing is not Japanese traditional rhythms. Nothing about it is Japanese.
Even though we had the experience of working with Seiichi Tanaka, we realized very early on that we were an Asian American group. The traditionalists were complaining that you can't use a tambourine with taiko or a cowbell. That's not taiko, and so, people were kind of getting down on us for that kind of stuff. But that's who we were.
We will never be Japanese from Japan because we didn't grow up in the environment. It empowered us to say, we definitely have a voice, we definitely have a unique identity of what we put out there in expression that stands alone from Japanese taiko.
The taiko group would play for Obon, and our friends from Chinatown would come all the way uptown just to see Obon, because they didn't view it as this was a Japanese or Buddhist thing. This was an Asian American thing. And they would come and they would dance in Obon, because there was really this sense of connectedness that we were Asian Americans, and that almost anything about different Asian American cultures was cool.
I think it goes way back to the first time I ever filled out a form, where were you born? And you put Manzanar Relocation Center, and you find yourself having to explain it, because people say, Manzanar, I mean, where is that,
When people talked about camp, I always thought they were talking about some summer camp. So I was pretty shocked when I found out what it was.
During college, I was in a conversation with my mother. She said she didn't really want us to speak Japanese because she was afraid that the camps would happen again. I don't know how other families felt, but I think that might have been a fairly common fear.
For many of the Nisei went through such an embarrassing time in history that for many of them, they did not encourage us to be Japanese or don't stick out. And so we tried to blend in to society.
We were looking for something to help young senseis and young Asians, to try to find a positive identity. And taiko seemed the perfect thing for it, really. Taiko was loud and it's like big and it's got a big sound and a lot of movement, and it's just so different than most senseis are.
I never knew Nihonjins, Japanese Americans, right, to be extroverted enough to even get up and do something that eccentric.
it was like breaking out a tradition, and I think that was that's what went with those days. I mean, those radical 70s.
That was during the time of the Vietnam era student strikes. Also in terms of political movements around the country, Black power, Chicano power, Asian power. So a lot of people were trying to express themselves, artistically as well.
In my neighborhood, a lot of the political activity for the black community was happening.
In New York City, it was the Black Panthers, it was Malcolm X, it was the Young Lords. So there were all of these organizations that were aligning along very specific ethnic and community lines, and were dealing with issues that related to community empowerment and pride.
We had a youth program, we had an Issei hot lunch program. It was really great because we really wanted to give back to the Issei for what they had contributed to us and just making it possible for us to be here.
One of the first performances I did, I think it was in 75 or 76 at one of the pilgrimages, and Tom Kurai and I did a performance together at Manzanar.
For me, it's very significant to be here today because Manzanar marks the beginning of my career as a taiko player, and also Manzanar symbolizes the beginning of my identity as a Japanese American.
I think as sanseis, we began to look more not at what the niseis did, but what the isseis did. And we wanted to communicate with Ji-chan and Ba-chan, and found out that there was a very rich culture there.
Our first performances would be like performing for the Issei. To have the response of Issei crying and then coming up and saying, "Oh, I'm so happy that, that you are being in touch with your Japanese culture." It makes me very proud.
I think there was a certain pride in seeing people, yellow people, Asian people, doing something so active.
I felt like there was a sense of empowerment through the energy.
As far as the arts go, the only thing I knew about was the koto and flower arranging, things like that. So when I saw taiko, that really, really attracted me.
The majority of players in the United States has been women. I would always tell the audiences, "Oh, American women are very strong." Being a strong, physical, powerful, really out there sort of art form that people can participate in, I think for women it's very empowering.
Enjoy the empowerment of playing and the feeling of it's okay that I can be up there making this much noise.
With taiko, it doesn't really make any difference. Men and women play pretty equally.
Once you hit that drum, your life has changed forever.
What I'm hoping is that people can use that and use that power that they have, in their relationship with the drum. To think about the larger world and what can be done and what needs to be done. I believe that these drums have that power. I believe that these drums have the power to change the world.
A lot of these kids who are playing now, they started when they were 5, so that really can't compare to somebody like myself I started when I was 21.
Now I am a grandfather of taiko. So many youngsters, maybe great grandfather soon.
で30年経って見渡したらなんかいっぱい増えたんだけど、これは日本の太鼓だよ、日系の太鼓だよっていうそういうねアイデンティティも持たないような太鼓がたくさん増えちゃったと僕は思うんですよね。
Taiko can be played by non-Asian American, non-Japanese people. Jazz can be played by non-black people now. But you always have to think about the origin of where these music are from.
The history of taiko will be inextricably bound to the history of Asian America, and no one can ever take that away. It will always be there, but we have to be secure enough in ourselves to let go of control.
It is reflecting in so many different ways Asian American and Japanese American experience. I think a lot of people still don't articulate it that way because it's not an intellectual process. It's a lived experience.
Taiko will always have a role to play in the Japanese American community, but that community is changing. In 50 years, the Japanese American community, if there is one, won't have the wartime relocation as a unifying force. It won't have the protest movements of the 60s as something to rally around. It'll be something different.
There are fewer and fewer Japanese Americans playing, and that's kind of freaky. It's great on the one hand. One of the things we used to say is we want taiko to be a household word.
In my eyes, taiko is becoming a really international art form. And now I think the next step is about to happen where taiko becomes really a truly world-encompassing art.
It's a great way to become part of the Japanese American experience and learn about the culture and be involved in the culture. And for me, I don't feel that you actually need to be Japanese American to do that.
Through taiko, we can add to this continued interaction with different cultures. And I think that's something that's also unique to Hawaii. The ability for people here to be able to work together and work so well. And it's just second nature. You just see that person playing taiko. You don't necessarily say, oh, hey, that's a Auli playing taiko.
My parents really wanted my sister and myself to become really Americanized.
So we didn't go to Japanese school or anything, and I didn't have a lot of Japanese American friends. So I thought that by playing taiko, that would be kind of a different way to connect with, you know, my heritage.
It's not as much about the drums as it is about being part of a group and part of being in the experience of making music together with other people.
To all, you know, be together at Kinada's practice place, having a potluck and jamming out together, you could really feel the connection that we all had through taiko. We were all brought here because of this drum. You know, you knew that they were your taiko brothers and sisters.
One of the interesting things that I would run into from time to time were other Koreans and Korean Americans who would question my participation in this activity. And one response can be, well, it's just music, it's art, and leave it at that, and there's no meaning beyond that. But I think one of the draws over time is the community involvement.
I remember being in this big circle and all these people around the fan, all these kids, and they're like, hey, Franco, and all the parents coming up and saying, you know, hey, how's it going? And for the first time, I think, since I'd been in the Bay Area, I felt this sense of belonging. And it wasn't solely related to playing taiko.
In the beginning, when there were only 4 or 5 or 6 groups, everyone could know each other. And then suddenly when there's 40 groups and there's new groups starting, you know, all the time, you can't know everybody. The Taiko Conference, it was an idea that had been in the Taiko community, I think, for a long time. People saying, you know, wow, we should all get together sometime, or we should have a conference. And finally, Dwayne Abata from the Japanese American Cultural Community Center decided to make it actually happen.
For the JACCC, I think that our interest in convening the conference was really to look at taiko as an art form that really developed out of the Japanese American community. Clearly, I think in 1999, and as we go into that new century, taiko is now American. It's Pan-Asian. It's really, you know, culturally and ethnically diverse.
It's the one single moment where the taiko community in North America could come together. It takes a lot of work bringing people together, but we feel that it's really needed in order to know where we came from, where is it going, and if we can kind of pass on and be responsible for the fundamental elements of that taiko essence.
Yeah, sure. After last night, wave everybody, okay?
Taiko, for it to live on, it's going to have to be renewing itself all of the time. Ceremony has to be that way, has to renew itself all the time. So you know, any kind of art form is the same way, it has to renew itself all the time. So, you know, maybe tradition is just things that are continually being rediscovered and used. You know, maybe that's what tradition is.
You know, back to the roots movement, Asian identity, you know, who should play taiko, what is taiko, you know, this whole discussion. I mean, they get so deep into it, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, we do it because it's fun? I mean, you know, anybody ever thought about that? It's fun.